start working on our egusi portion of our meal. Now, egusi is it's actually a very common West African type of soup. It's called different things in different places. Akontoshi, agushi in Ghana, and in different places they call it different. In Nigeria, we call it egusi. So to make our egusi soup, you're going to need half a red onion. It's called egusi soup by a lot of people, but it's not really a soup like you would have in the Western sense. It's really a stew. Now, in a pot, we're going to heat up some oil. And the oil that we're going to be using is palm oil. Now, palm oil is indigenous to West Africa. And it is oil that is tapped off of palm trees in West Africa. It has a red look to it, has a very oily taste, but also very, very good. It is essential in making of a classic Nigerian egusi. We're going to need about half a cup to a cup of this. Now, in room temperature, palm oil becomes solid. So obviously it's not the most healthy of foods to eat, but you use moderation when you eat it. And with moderation, of course, everything is okay. So we're going to melt that. And once we melt it down, we're going to start cooking with it. Now, palm oil has a very low smoking point. So when you're cooking palm oil, you could do one of two things. You can either cover it up and allow it to smoke before you cook with it, or you can just melt it and cook with it. Now, I prefer to just cook with it once it gets melted before it gets to the smoking point, because once it gets smoking, it's very hard to cook with it at that time. So I prefer to use it right before it goes into the smoking point. So we're just going to melt this a little further. And while I'm letting that melt, I will get the items I'm going to need for my egusi soup. Red pepper and some bouillon base. My oil has melted completely and it has this yellow orange type of look to it. Now it's heated up, we can add our onions in there. And what we're trying to do with our onions is we want to cook it until it's a little translucent. About 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes is good with this. I'm going to mix that in. And along with this, we're going to place a healthy dose of bouillon base in there. 2 tablespoons is fine. We're going to mix this. You're going to continue to stir this, taking care not to burn it. Keep a very close eye on that. While that is cooking, I'm going to show you the egusi we're going to be working with. And ladies and gentlemen, this is egusi. Egusi is melon seeds that have been dried and ground up, and it looks almost like breadcrumbs, okay? Has a consistency of breadcrumbs. When you cook it, it has a delicious nutty taste to it, and it's really, really good. It's something that you would see used in a lot of West African type of cooking. You can find this really in most African stores. Just ask for egusi. And if you do not have an African store near you, you can be able to use pumpkin seeds, just toast them and then ground them, and then you should have something like that. Okay. Still looking at our onions, it's coming together. We're going to let that cook a little bit more. And then once we're done with this, once it's ready, we're going to fry this. The onions look good. It's time for us to pour some of this in. And I have about 1.5 cups of ground egusi here. I'm adding to my palm oil and onion mix here. Mixing that in, making sure it's well mixed in. And we're going to continue to mix this for about a minute or so until it's well incorporated. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue to work on our egusi soup and check in on our pepper stew. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. So while you're on break, I got some crayfish or some dried shrimp. I have toasted it and I have blended it. And it's going to give me about 2 heaping tablespoons full of the crayfish. And I'm mixing that into my fried egusi and my fried onions. Traditional egusi soup is a seafood-rich type of soup or stew. So, to add to that seafood type of flavor, we have our toasted crayfish in there. I'm going to let that sit for about another minute before I add any stock in there. I'll lower that to low so as not to burn my egusi. And I'm going to check in on my meat. My meat is ready. And I'm going to need my stock for my meat to make my soup. So I'm going to take this out and then drain it. See, that's the thing with African cuisine. You waste not. You use every single thing you can possibly use. Be it stock, be it our food, our seeds, our nuts, our vegetables, everything we use. See? The fork is going through the skin. Our meat is ready. Just going to pull that out, place this in here, and I have my stock. There, beautiful stock. We're going to use this for our egusi soup. This is about 1.5 cups of goat meat stock. Mix this very well. The cooking process is probably going to take you about 15 to 20 minutes. You know it is cooked when the egusi starts to form a curdled type of texture to it. Really starts to come together, then you know it is ready. To that, I'll be adding cleaned periwinkles in here. Very common in West African cuisine. I'm going to be placing a little of that in here, about 1/2 cup or so of that. And we use periwinkles in a lot of stuff. Egusi soup, yam pottage, any kind of item, any kind of food that calls for a seafood base. It's mixed very nicely. We're going to check on this in about 15 minutes or so. Welcome back, guys. Okay, now, my egusi is ready. It has curdled up and is almost ready to serve. What I'm going to add to my egusi right now will be some frozen chopped spinach, about 8 ounces or so, which means really 1/2 bag. I'm just going to add that in there. Spinach cooks very fast, so you don't have to keep it in here. Cooking for a long period of time. Just mix this. And we're going to let this simmer for an additional 10 minutes. And then it should be ready. Cover that up. There we go. It's nice and cool. That is pounded yam fufu. It's time for me to plate my wonderful soup, my egusi soup. It has all that beautiful spinach in it. Just gorgeous. It's enough for one serving. To that, I will add my pepper stew. And a couple of pieces of meat. Of that beautiful goat meat. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. A traditional, a classic West African dinner. Pounded yam with egusi soup and pepper stew. Now remember, whenever you try to do something in your kitchen and you're trying to do something new, try something African. It is the best way to go. From my kitchen to yours. Enjoy.
Pẹ̀lú stockfish, fún mi ní plantain, àti fresh fish, ṣàkì àpọ̀mọ́, àti mọ́ínmọ́ín, coleslaw, small sauce, salad. samosa.
Kò jẹ́ rọ́sùn.
Ẹ má jẹ́ ó pọ̀ jù. Adéwà